The broadcast is now starting.
Welcome, everyone, to a special edition of the PIXELMILL webinar series. We're doing it on a Friday. Usually we're on Thursday, so here we are on a Friday and a little bit early. And today's presentation of Activate Remote Work Immediately with Office 365. As I'm sure you all know, there's a lot going on in the world right now, and it's changed the landscape of everything for everybody, really. It's a very general term, but so it's changed the way we're all approaching work and the way that we approach how we relate with each other. So today, our speaker will talk about it more in a bit, but that's our goal today, is to help you guys get that set up. If you haven't joined us before for one of our webinars, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy to have you here. If this is your second, third, gosh, how many have we done now? 35th and a half webinar. Thank you so much for coming back. We really appreciate you constantly coming back and hanging out with us all the time. Couple quick webinar things that you're probably used to if you've been on one of these before. If you have a question or comment or anything, there is a questions tab, a chat tab. Please feel free to throw your questions, throw your comments up there. I'll be keeping track of those all throughout, and we'll make sure we get those in. If for some reason we don't get to them right into the moment, we do try to leave a little bit of time at the end for a little bit of Q&A, and we'll try to address those at that time. But we love questions. Throw them out there. We will definitely include those. All right. Enough of my yapping. Let's get to our session. Today's speaker, you might recognize him. He's the other guy in the video camera. He is the president and co-founder of PIXELMILL. He is Eric Overfield. Take it away, boss.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. I'm happy to be presenting this material today. At the same time, I'm sad for the reasons why. I think for obvious reasons of what's going on in the world today. It's a scary place, and a lot of us are working from home now, and a lot of us had to immediately start working from home. And we started hearing daily from clients, from people we're talking to, chatter out in the marketplace of what are we supposed to do now? Our workplace isn't able to support this kind of remote setup. So what should we do? And as we kept talking internally and answering these questions as best we could, we realized, it's great what Teams can do. It's great what Office can do, but people kept asking, and we wanted to be able to answer. Yeah, but I need a solution today, like not tomorrow, not next week, not in 3 months. We need something today. And as we're trying to come up with answers that would make the most sense, we said, wait a second, let's go ahead and share this to a broader audience and say, hey, here's what's going on. So I have a lot of material I'd love to cover. It's almost a full day workshop. We'll keep this down to that hour time frame. And but that being said, I'm hoping to get questions from you. I'm sure a lot of you are concerned. I'm sure a lot of you that are on the call right now or are listening to the recording are sitting there with this task they've been given. Maybe you're with IT or something like that, and you've been told, we need to support digital workspace today. And what do we do? And you're looking at all these roadblocks in your way. And I want to capture some of those and talk through some of them. And that's my promise to you at the end here is I hope I've helped clarify some answers for you. I'm looking forward to giving you material that you can take back to your leadership and say, hey, here's what we need to do to get moving here. I've got a lot of links for you. We'll have the slide deck for you eventually in the show notes and whatnot. So you'll be able to get all this material and use it to move your projects forward and help move your organization forward, because in this time of kind of we're all a little scared and a little worried what's going on, there are good solutions out there for us to move forward to help our organization stand the up and up, because I do truly absolutely believe that we're gonna be okay, that things are gonna work out, and we just want to make sure that our organizations are set up for success, because we're probably in for some turbulent times for a little bit here. So with that, let's go ahead and kind of get started. Let's see here. Quickly, who I am. My name is Eric Overfield, as Michael said, president, co-founder here at Microsoft at PIXELMILL. I am a Microsoft MVP and a Microsoft regional director, which basically means I'm interacting with Microsoft a lot, and I get a lot of insider information. And although I cannot share it directly, I'm going to try to always help point you in the best direction I think possible based upon everything that I know. You can always find me at ericoverfield.com or at Eric Overfield. Love to hear from you. And if you want to know more about PIXELMILL, if you're new to PIXELMILL, we build digital workspaces for organizations around the world. And the topic that we're talking about today is absolutely something that we do for our clients. So if you get stuck and you're like, hey, look, I love the material, but I still need help, we'd love to talk to you. We've got some packages for you around Teams and the digital workspace to help you out. That being said, I've been promising you in this call, I intend to give away a lot of really good information to you that you can use today so that you can go back to your organization. But you can always find us, of course, at pixelmill.com, pixelmill.com/blog, at pixelmillteam, etc. Okay, so what do I want to discuss today? What is it that I think is important that we review? Well, in order for the digital workspace to work, we really need to be cloud ready. There's only so much an on-premises version of a digital workspace can do. So I want to discuss what can we do, what can we look at in our organizations to say, well, are we even ready for this? And then really, I want to give us a big overview of Office 365 as that digital workspace, as that foundation for our digital workspace. And I want to stay high level here. We don't have time to go into technical details. That's not the point of this. There's lots of documentation. Some more of my show notes I'm going to give you. So when you want to get into the weeds of this, it's all there for you. It's all ready for you. I want to talk high-end strategy as much as possible. Do want to give you some of those strategies, some etiquette, and some of the pitfalls that I believe you're going to run into, and some of them you're going to fall into, but I want you to, as best as we can, know, hey, this is a pitfall, we're about to run into it, it's going to be okay, let's try to fill it in with as much dirt as possible beforehand, so it's going to be easy to get out of it in that 3, 6, 12-month time frame. And let's get your questions. There's a potentiality we're going to get a lot of questions, which is great. If I can't get to all of them now, the intention is always we will get to those in our follow-up blog post. So I will do everything I can with myself and the rest of my team to provide you as much guidance as as possible. So why is this important? Like we've jumped our webinar series to get this material out because the fact is there's this immediate need, and we're hearing it from multiple clients, from multiple people we talked to. I had multiple conversations yesterday alone with clients that they already were looking at having a pretty solid, robust digital workspace, but now it's like, no, now we need it to be able to support hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of employees, all remote today. And what is it that we're going to do? And so that's really what it is that I want to help address, is some of those concerns and fears, and help try to point you in the right directions, and again, give you that material you can use to go make the decisions that you need to make with your organization. Now, PIXELMILL'S in an interesting spot, and I'm actually really excited where we are per se in this turbulent time, in the sense that we've already made a lot of these transitions, and I think that also helps in the responses that I'm able to give to you and to anyone else. Is we made this transition. Now, we are a smaller organization. I totally understand that we're under that 100, 300 people threshold, so we have kind of a much different view of things. But we went remote, basically 100% remote, about a year ago, and it has worked really well. And I think what we can see is any of my responses I'm giving to you, I'm doing my best to always weave in how that worked well for PIXELMILL and how we were able to communicate and collaborate remotely. And when we talk about some of the etiquette things, what is it that we've learned on how to communicate remotely? Because we don't have cubicles that we can just walk next door to. We can't just pull the people together in a physical conference room and say, all right, let's have an all teams meeting. We have to use these digital tools. And I have found, and if any of you have been on the webinars in the last 3 to 6 months, you've probably seen my kind of glowing excitement around the digital workspace. Fortunately, in the tragedy of today's world, what's going on, Microsoft already set us up for success with the digital workspace tools that they provided. If this was a year or two it would have been much more challenging to support a actually robust digital workspace, because the tools were not fully cohesively there. To kind of jump to the chase, the big piece that was missing that I think has really been solved is Microsoft Teams. Now, Microsoft Teams just turned 3. I've got a blog post for you shortly I'll be sharing. So, Teams was around a couple years ago, but admittedly, it had some gaps. A lot of those gaps have been solved, and Teams has been very robust. I was on a global conference with multiple thousand people throughout this week, all supported by Teams, and it handled very well. It handled that workload pretty impressively, and I was pretty excited to see how that all worked. So hopefully, with what I've learned and my team has learned with Teams, that will and the digital workspace, that will help you then. Because of the stories we have. So the next step for me, like the first step on this kind of journey of the digital workspace, is looking at is your team cloud ready? Now, if you're on this call, you probably want to know about, like, today, we need this today. And if you're not cloud ready, this is going to be more tough. And that's okay. I mean, that's the way it is. That's your reality. So some of these things you hear, you may be like, well, I can't do it because of this. Yes. Okay. Let's highlight those, right? So now at least you can go to your executive team. You can go to your project sponsors and you can say, we need this. So, okay, what can you do to get around that roadblock? What can you do to get around that boulder? But in the meantime, working with, say, IT or something to help remove that. In order for your team to work remotely, they're going to need reliable internet access. And do they have that? And some people may not live in major metropolitan areas where it's harder to get internet, or maybe they relied on a cell service or something that worked fine for simple streaming or email at home, but now with the requirements necessary of a digital workspace, there might be issues. And that's not something you may be able to solve, but it's something you probably will have to work with your teams, or you'll have to give the training or the education to the managers and the team leaders so that they know, hey, you've got to work with people on the internet access. But that being said, do you also have all of the appropriate hardware in people's hands? A lot of organizations require specific laptops, or they require remote desktops in order to be able to interact with the organizational content data. And remote desktops have different software requirements possibly on how you would be installing aspects of the digital workspace, such as the Teams client. The Teams client that would be installed in a remote desktop is different. Basically, there's a different process than if you're installing it, say, on a laptop or a mobile workstation. And these are things you're going to have to think about. VPN access. So I know there was a story that was recently told to me, and not give away any names or companies, of course, but someone was being sent home to work, and great. So we knew that they were in a pretty highly secure industry, and so okay. So what kind of VPN setup do you have? And the person was like, VPN? I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, you're not going to be able to get to your organizational data because there's no way your organization is going to let you connect to it without some sort of VPN setup or two-form authentication so that you can securely get into your cloud data, et cetera. You've also got to think about security governance in general and how your data was secured and how your digital workspace was secured, and is that actually going to support the true remote desktop or the non-secure hardware or whatever it is that you may need to think about. And then also, have you already deployed licensing and cloud services? I think a lot of you might be like, well, we've deployed Office 365, or we might have some of the licenses, but we don't know. Or most of our team is on E1 licenses, or they're not licensed users, they're external, and yet we still need all these tools. And these are definitely roadblocks we're going to get to shortly, but they're things that you're going to need to worry about is how cloud ready are we? And I wanted to make sure we highlighted some of the biggies there. Are your users going to be able to connect to the internet with enough speed to be able to use the tools that they need? Are they going to be able to physically connect to it as well via VPNs, et cetera? And are they going to have the licenses that they need from a remote location to be able to connect to this? Well, when I look at all of this, then what I'm suggesting, what I'd be recommending is, in general, from kind of a high level, is in this time, this is when you need to make sure that Office 365 gets rolled out effectively immediately. If you were on the fence, or if you had certain tools where you're thinking, maybe, I definitely have some pitfalls that I want you to avoid. But Office 365 is a more collective whole. Microsoft 365 is going to provide you the tools that you need for your organization to work in a remote location. Not all of them. I mean, of course, you still might have things such as Salesforce or SAP, et cetera, but the core of your digital workspace, the components you would need to at least get the job done today, a lot of what you might need is available in Microsoft 365. And I'm going to focus primarily on Teams. I mean, I admit that in this call, that's the big piece that that will solve a lot of the problems that we have when we're no longer able to really physically interact with somebody, because we were using email, we were already using email, we were using Word, PowerPoint, et cetera. We were storing them in SharePoint. If you're on-prem, of course, that might be more difficult to get from a remote location. That's a roadblock I can't solve today for you, but I can help you highlight it and try to give you some workarounds for it. But you've got this tool set in Microsoft 365 or Office 365 that really will help you move forward. Now, I'm using a slide from a previous webinar that we did here. And so we did a whole webinar recently on raising the IQ of your digital workspace with Microsoft 365. If you go to pixelmill.com/blog, you will find that article up there. We're going to put it in our show notes. So I recommend, if you would like an overview of kind of Microsoft 365, by all means, please go watch that. But in general, what you're getting here is one tool set that you can use to provide a lot of the aspects that you need in your day-to-day job that will replace a lot of the physical aspects that were necessary. Of course, if you still needed to touch a physical document, there's only so much we can do here. But what I'm trying to help do is solve that gap of being able to communicate and collaborate effectively with people when you no longer can just meet them at the coffee machine, or you're not able to go to their cubicle next door, or you're not able to jump into a conference room. Like, what are we going to do? And then secondarily, how are we going to safely and securely share and trade the digital assets that we've been working with, such as Word documents, PowerPoint, et cetera. So looking at planning for success, setting ourselves up here, there's two big things that I'm looking at right now. The first of which is that the time is of the essence at this point. If your organization is going to shut down for 3 to 6 months, you might be okay that you don't have to worry about this. But most of us, we have no choice. And a lot of organizations are realizing the economy is in potentially a precarious state. And even more so why we want to really deliver what it is we're doing. And some of you, a lot of you probably are actually in industries right now that are actually booming because of what's going on. A lot of financial institutions, et cetera, we work with, I mean, they're seeing a boom in services because people are looking to take advantage of the situation as best they can, such as mortgage refinances and whatnot. And so there's a lot of work that's being generated, and organizations want to be able to deliver to their customer. And so there's going to be a lot of pressure on us to get our job done. So we in the service ownership side, a lot of you probably are from IT or related to IT services, and you've got to deliver these tools. It's paramount to your job. You may have been told, kind of put everything else to the side, solve these tools, because 10,000 of us need to be able to communicate effectively. What are we going to do? So when you're planning through this whole thing, you're not going to get what you want 100%. It's just not going to happen. There's always this this adage where you've got the three different things. Do you want something high quality? Do you want something fast? Do you want something inexpensive? You get to pick two. And a lot of us don't have an unlimited budget, so we're possibly not going to either get exactly what we want right off the bat, or we're going to have some of these trade-offs. So if we're going to say, okay, we had this plan to roll out, say, Microsoft Teams over the next year, and here's the plan that we had, but now you need to roll that out today, you're probably not going to get a few things you wanted, maybe governance, such as the proper governance in place, et cetera. So now what's going to happen? Potentially in 3 to 6 months, you're going to realize you have a potentially odd or bloated Teams environment. Okay, so what are you going to do with that? Well, I'm not saying you should shut things down and say, okay, we're gonna force the 6-month, 12-month cycle in order to roll this out, because that isn't going to solve the immediate need. But do you really want then shadow IT to get involved and say, well, let's just go spin up other services? Because again, 3 to 6 months, you're going to realize we've got all these things, we've got conversations that aren't able to be migrated together. Like, what are we going to do? So in this time of the essence, you're going to have to make some trade-offs, do the best you can to educate yourself through what those trade-offs would be. And hopefully my promise to you is what I'm trying to do here is help you realize what some of those trade-offs are and help give you some of those steps that you can use to highlight them, so that you can work with your executive sponsors and leadership team to say, hey, here's the decisions we're making, and here's the potential outcome of them long term, but here's the trade-off we're getting. We're going to get a solid, reliable platform to do this thing that we need, whatever that may be. But we know that these things might become an issue in X time. And here's the potential plan to mitigate that, so that in 3, 6, 12 months, we can go and clean things up, or we can then deprecate old conversations or old services as we've cleaned them up and made them a little more reliable or robust, or fit them within governance policies moving forward. So the best we can plan, but again, time of the essence. So you can't plan for 3 months. You're going to have to make some decisions today. Just try to document out what you're doing. So there's a lot of roadblocks I think you've either are seeing or you're going to see really soon, or you haven't noticed yet that they're in front of you. And I'm sure I could break this into 3 or 5 slides and really spend a lot of time, but I'm going to try to just highlight the biggest components now. The primary roadblock I'm seeing right now is related to IT, and I'm sure a lot of you are in IT, and it's not that you want to be a roadblock, but it is. If you're corporate communications, possibly, or maybe you're in HR, a lot of these departments also own the digital platform. IT is going to be getting in your way, and the reason why makes sense to me is that they're supposed to be maintaining this system safely and securely with solid guidelines and governance in place, so that you don't have this bloat, you don't have things being done improperly, and there's a lot of security concerns that make sense, or regulatory concerns that you need to think about. You just can't open things up and allow anybody to do anything. And so IT is probably going to be there. There's also infrastructure problems. People cannot connect to to your digital workspace because they need to be on issued desktops in order to have the security credentials to be able to authenticate into Office 365, let's say. Maybe you don't have the licensing squared away. Totally makes sense to me that not everyone has an E5 license. Not that most of us do, but that a lot of us might not have. A lot of your frontline workers may not have the licensing required to be able to get into the tools that you need. You might have very limited governance policies that you can either have that are already in place or that you can put into place. And that might be a roadblock because, again, IT or some other project sponsors or executives may say, well, without governance, we're not going to allow this to move forward. Unless there's a plan, we can't move forward. Okay, I mean, I understand that. And next slide here is removing roadblocks. So if you're thinking like, okay, well, it's my answer, I'm going to do my best to answer all these for you. A roadblock around this rushed rollout is it's a roadblock because you're not going to have time potentially to train people. And a lot of I've worked with a lot of organizations where they have a fair amount of employees that don't like these kind of changes. They have their processes in place, and you're going to say to them, okay, here's this new tool, good luck. And not everyone has the same level of comfort with technology as others. And so without training, people might look at a tool and go, I don't get it, and I don't know what to do, and I'm out of here. And you're causing more problems than possibly more problems than you started with. But it could have been solved potentially with some minimal training or access to training so that people can kind of quickly get themselves up to speed, or that they have some sort of feedback mechanism to work with. And then some other things that I could see being roadblocks is that we don't have the time in our organizations to be able to support all these new tools, and the fact that we just onboarded 10,000 people onto one platform. That's a pretty real roadblock. Along with that, I see that there might be competing products. You already have other tools that can do some of this, or you're going to get shadow IT, where an organization's just going to say, look, I just found this other tool. I'm going to go use it for my team. And they're going to go off and do it. And now you've lost all control of it. IT may not even know that exists. Potentially that team over there doing that thing on that other tool might be absolutely doing things in an unsafe, insecure way that definitely doesn't follow regulations that could come back and bite you, 3, 6, 12 months down the line. Really severe problems that can get in your way into collectively and cohesively rolling out a new strategy. And then let's say in 3, 6, 12 months, things start to settle and you're able to work forward with this. Now you want to migrate everything back into sort of one new environment. And a lot of tools out there don't have the best migration strategies, unfortunately, at the moment. And I'm thinking here Teams. Microsoft Teams itself doesn't have a way to migrate conversations, teams, et cetera, into different teams or channels or different tenants. Now, there are third-party tools to do that, and potentially you'll find some third-party tools, but there's still limitations on what may be migrated. So I can see that organization, product sponsor saying, you may not do even an ad hoc thing because we can't ever clean that up the way we'd want to. That could definitely be a real roadblock that can get in your way. My assumption, you could probably come up with 5 or 10 more right now. Other roadblocks you're running into. It's my hope that I sort of captured the overall idea of what those roadblocks may look like. But the roadblocks are real, and you need to remove them somehow. You need to get them out of the way. You need to roll them out of the way so you can squeeze behind them or around them right now. we need to help you do something. That's my goal here, is what can we do to help you get around those roadblocks? And then after this slide, what I want to then do is look at the different tools that we've got, so that you hopefully can then use that material to go sell this to project sponsors, to sell it to your organization and say, hey, look, we've got a plan forward for these types of things. Let's go ahead and do what we can to roll this thing out or that thing out to solve some of the really big needs that you have. First and foremost, to me, for removing any roadblock is getting leadership on board. If you've just been told go fix it, I don't know if that's going to be enough. I believe that you need to have strong support from leaders, and particularly you really need an executive sponsor. If you don't have a true executive sponsor, I almost argue you need to go get it. You need to work, maybe your manager needs to go do that. You need to hammer that in, that unless you're getting leadership from the top that's saying, look, yes, I know this is a problem. You have my full support, and go down that path and get it done. And there needs to be really a reasonable, fair line of communication to that sponsor, because a large organization is going to have problems. A small organization will have problems unless they have that buy-off somewhere near the top that we're going to move down this path, kind of that hell or high water. We're going to do this. We're going to make it work. Without that, you can run into some real roadblocks, because you might get some other leadership that's really concerned. They'll have that one thing that gets in their way, and they won't be able to get past that. And you might need another executive to be able to talk to executives to say, no, we're going to do this. Like, this is what it is. I can explain to you in 10 minutes what's going on. There'll be that mutual level of respect, and that could really be key to getting these projects immediately moved forward. The next thing I'm looking for, that I'd be suggesting that you look for, are finding additional champions within your organization who do get it, where you can bring these people on board into the digital workspace strategies that you're going to be rolling out, because your team is not going to be able to support your whole organization. It's just not possible. There's going to be too many questions. So if in the larger teams that are out there, the larger groups of people that are out there, if you can knock off one or two champions within that team to say, hey, here's our tool set. Here's how we're going to use it. Here's the basic things. Please don't do this, because this kind of thing would be bad. And go support your team. And if you have questions, here's the line of communication to get back to us, and we'll do everything we can to support you. Those champions will make your job a lot easier. I have found that in most organizations I've worked with, that within any given team, there's almost always one person at least who, once they see what Microsoft 365 can do, in particular around Teams as the hub of a digital workspace, they're sold. They get it, and they want everything else to happen. And going back to the PIXELMILL'S story, that's what we did in our team. My team, in particular, I think it was our design team at the time, really wanted to be able to, we were all in the office, they wanted to be able to chat easier. And so they went out and they spun up Slack years ago. And they liked it, and they showed it to me, and I'm like, yeah, okay, kind of used it, kind of cool. And then Teams came around, and they went off, and little Skunkworks project worked on Teams. They came over to me, they showed me Teams and said, hey, we want to move to this. I worked with it for a couple days. I was sold, just sold. And so once I got that buy off onto me, then it just worked. But they also worked, they had that champion as well that just saw it. And we're there, we get it. And we've got people in our organization who understand Teams. And when we have questions about how to do something, we go to them, and they love figuring it out, and they go tell us, hey, here's how we're going to do it in this platform. Works really well.
Hey, Eric, we had a question come in. I'm going to interject really quick. Okay. Can you speak to business sponsors, not just technical exec sponsors? Need more than engineers pushing this out because of the urgent need, without understanding the product and how it changes work. Does that make sense?
You like me to address how to find business sponsors?
I guess focus it more toward a business sponsor as opposed to just a technical sponsor.
Oh, more of a comment?
No, I think it's a question. It's, can you speak to how you would
a
business
okay.
sponsor as
Yeah,
opposed to it?
I think I can. Okay. So when I'm talking about executive sponsorship, I can definitely see that there's two big ones. There's the technical executive sponsors that typically be someone in charge of IT or something, but then there's also the business executive sponsors. Those are the non-technical folks that potentially they don't really care about the tech per se. They're not techie people. They just know that the organization needs to communicate, and getting that buy-off. I definitely think that getting executive leadership on both sides works. Now, there's lots of strategies, at least a couple I could think of right now I'd go with, depending upon how big your org is and where you are in that food chain, to be very blunt. You may only really have access to that one executive sponsor, but if you can get them to understand the value of it and why we're having them do it, if they just say, look, just go figure this out, then I would come back to them and say, I need 10, 20 minutes of your time. Here's the strategy I want to go down. Here's some of the benefits that I see. Here's some of the roadblocks. Do you support this? And can I move forward with this? Do I have your support? And if other if other teams, other groups get involved and start to give roadblocks, will you be able to talk to that other leadership? Because ideally, I'm saying that what I'm looking at is that having the technical executive sponsor speak to the other large team leaders, the other executive team, and get them to buy off. It's going to make things probably a little more smooth. You might have to be fighting a lot of battles that you may not have the you may not be able to really do on your own. So one strategy is, if you only have that one exec sponsor, working with them to ensure that they really understand and get it, and they'll help go to bat for you with other executives, so that those executives can push down their team. A second strategy I see is, if you could get a couple of executives to understand this and see the value of it, then absolutely, it's going to even be better, because then they all can work in their senior leadership teams, and they've got multiple people who understand the value of this. If I had to pick one, I would. That one's really tough. Like, I had to say, I only could have one who was going to be on the business side or on the technical side. I hate to do a consultant answer, but it depends. The technical side is going to understand technically, but they may have problems pushing the non-technical executives to move forward correctly, how would be best for the organization. But I found that if you don't have a technical sponsor, IT can really get in the way. Now, I've lived a lot of my life in the IT world, so I understand why IT can get in the way, but I can see the technical side, the technical teams just saying, no, we can't do it. We're not going to do it. It's not secure. We need VPNs. We need these things to get in the way. And I understand why they're there. But that being said, the business might just be pushing, saying, well, no. And the technical's just saying, nope, I can't do it. I'm not going to sign off on that. If I could get the technical person to sign off on the technical aspects of it, then I feel more confident that that could then be pushed into the organization rather the other way. But I can't just say I'd throw all my weight just behind a business executive either. So I don't know if I answered that question. I think we could talk along about that, but hopefully that helped. If it didn't clarify it or ask a follow-up, I'm going to keep moving, just in interest in time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next roadblock, and I love my roadblocks. As I was writing this content, I'm chuckling to myself, because I don't like some of these answers, but they're the best answers I can give you, and I will support them greatly. You're going to find some answers that probably aren't the best right now. As an example, when we create a team, now we'll get into teams more for those of you new to Teams, but you might be creating a team within Microsoft Teams, and you may not have your governance policy perfectly in place, and you're going to allow more people than you'd want to be able to create teams. And the naming convention of that might not be good. And yes, that's not a good thing, because migrating teams is really tough right now. Renaming teams is not a good idea right now. But I'm just trying to be real with you all. Like, what are you supposed to do? Are you going to put in place a huge naming policy convention right now that has a huge form that doesn't exist yet, that's going to take 2 weeks to build and test? I get why you would say yes, I do. But at the same time, I have to argue that you need to look within your organization and say, what level of risk are we willing to tolerate right now to make this move forward? How can we create a team for a Microsoft Teams team for every hierarchical organization and say, you've got this team for now. You've got it. It's yours to play with. Be aware that in 6 months it may disappear. Maybe in 6 months we're going to deprecate it. We're going to have to move you somewhere else. And we'll support you through that. What solutions could you put in place now that are safe and secure enough, that do follow what your organization needs, but they remove the roadblocks so that people can communicate and collaborate today? You're going to need to go looking for those, and we could spend a long time thinking through all those scenarios. But hopefully that gives you an idea that you get a little bit of a blessing of someone saying, and I feel pretty confident here. I would say this to someone who was coming to me directly, a client that was coming to me directly, and say, look, what are some possible solutions, but what are the ramifications, and how would we get back to normalcy in X months or however long this whole thing may take to kind of find a new normal? Another way to get around roadblocks is education. And if you're listening to this, you're already on step 1, 7, 20, 13, whatever step you're on. There's so much education available out there for you. The big one that I'm going to recommend is docs.microsoft.com. And then from there, you can look at your platforms, SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, etc. So docs.microsoft.com/Microsoft Teams. There is training material, there's governance, there's guidance, there's how-tos, there's setting up champion programs. There's so much material. It is overwhelming, of course. You can't absorb it all. It's going to take you months to absorb it all. But there's so much material out there for you. Go knock off some of the big things. Go tackle some of the big problems you have. Look at docs.microsoft.com. You'll probably find some resources on it. You can use all that material basically for free. So if you're spinning up training sites, link back to it from in your training material. Send your users to the Microsoft documentation. It's some of the best documentation I find, and it's not the documentation from 10 years ago. The docs at docs.microsoft.com is super fresh and super relevant, and I rarely find something that doesn't make sense and isn't pretty comprehensive. So continue to do what you can to educate yourself as necessary and use the resources that are out there. And then this last one, this one's a tricky one that I added kind of as a last minute, and that's talk to Microsoft. A lot of you are enterprise customers for Microsoft, and you've got Microsoft reps. Work with them as best you can. If you have licensing problems, go talk to them and figure out what those answers are. Don't try to just Google all this stuff. You might not get the data that you're looking for. There are, of course, limitations to that. Microsoft has certain agendas. Of course, they're looking to sell you licenses, and they're going to want you to all sign up for E5s, and great. That would solve your problem. There are a lot of them. And I know a lot of you can't do that, but work with them. Help get those licenses move forward, or help get the quotes in front of you so you can send them to your project sponsors and say, hey, look, we know we need these licenses. We've been talking about it. Here's what it's going to look like. But work with Microsoft as best you can. If you're a smaller client, a smaller customer of Microsoft, and you don't have that, of course, that's going to be more challenging. But if you do, I would at least keep your Microsoft reps in the loop as to what you're doing and what you're thinking. They are there to help you, and they're going to do everything they can to help move you forward in digital workspace. And then you'll want to find where the two paths merge, where what Microsoft wants, what you want, come together, and you can find a path forward. So many more roadblocks we could try to remove, but hopefully this moves you in the right directions. And now we can look at then kind of specific solutions to larger specific problems. And some of this might be a little direct. Bear with me, and I'm trying to make some points here, trying to help give you all of the resources you need, and ideally a lot of the messaging that you may need to go back to your organization and say, okay, team, this is what we do. So to me, step one on this whole thing, you got to get Microsoft Teams rolled out now. A lot of the customers, again, I've been working with over the last week, they already were looking at Teams. They may have 3 people on Teams. They may have a team of 100 on Teams. I would do everything I could to get Microsoft Teams rolled out right now. Again, if you're on this call, probably you've all been working in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. A lot of you most likely have some sort of licensing set up. Maybe not everyone's licensed, and that is a roadblock that you'd want to deal with. But Teams is going to address a lot of your immediate needs that you have. And long term, I am fully supportive of where Microsoft is taking Teams. As a side note, just something that I've noticed that I kind of want to share from the Microsoft's perspective, or from my view of the Microsoft perspective. Microsoft Teams, and we'll talk a lot about we'll talk a lot more about it if you're still new to it, but it's a great platform. It's been around for 3 years, as I said, and it was owned by a specific person at Microsoft. In Microsoft terminology, is called the CVP, of Corporate Vice President. And that person had a large team that was building Microsoft Teams, and they did their own thing, and that is great. That got a product off the ground, forward, doing everything it needed to do to compete in the marketplace and then go beyond what the competitors do in the marketplace. That is awesome. It just so happens that that person retired recently. And so Microsoft had to take Teams, and they needed to find a new owner for it within the Microsoft ecosystem. And they found another CVP. His name is Jeff Teeper, who took over Teams. Now, for those of you in the SharePoint world, you may have heard this name, Jeff Teeper. He's owned SharePoint. He's the father of SharePoint. He's owned SharePoint since the 90s there, the pre-2000s, and he's been in charge of it ever since. Well, he's also in charge of Office, Yammer, and Stream. So if you take SharePoint, Office, Yammer, Stream, and now Teams, and put them under one engineer, one primary umbrella, think of what that's going to do on integration. Think of what that's going to do about putting these platforms and making them all work together as a cohesive digital workspace. That's huge. Not only that, Teams has been performing so well. I just have to say it's a great tool. So I feel very confident being a cheerleader behind it that this is a good tool. So I look at it for you. Teams can become that hub of your digital workspace if it's not already. Getting the sponsorship though is going to be key on this to get it to make sure it makes sense. Getting IT to accept that this is the way that we're going to move forward with it, and helping get potentially the Teams client installed on everyone's workstations or in remote desktops or made available in remote locations, etc. Getting those licenses going, I think these are just things that need to be done. Teams, I believe, require strong governance. And there's such a range in governance, because when you start creating teams within Teams, a collection of people within Teams, Microsoft Teams, by default, really, Microsoft looks at it that anybody in your org should be able to do that. So you've got 10,000 people. Do you want 10,000 people creating teams in your orgs? Probably not, because you're going to get 17 teams that all do the same thing. So then the other side of that is you could have nobody create teams except 3 people. Well, that's not going to work in an organization of 10,000 people probably, because that's going to be crazy. So most organizations create governance. They have a plan around team naming, who can create teams. They create policies of these people, these types of people create teams. These type of people can request teams through a Power App, through a form, etc. We're going to have workflows around this to automate it. Totally understand. Now, probably not going to fully work. You need to get this out now, because we're going to get to it in the next slides, the next 10, 20 minutes of what it is that Teams can do. Like, how are we going to replace what we did in the office? And you're going to find that Teams is 4 out of 5 times going to be the hub. That's where you're going to be doing the work, so that your organization can, in fact, move forward. And do everything you can to educate your team as to what's happening. Find those champions, provide them at least the starting material so that they can help leverage this tool internally, and people feel comfortable to at least understand here's what's supposed to happen. Or you get managers involved so that you give them a team. You create a team for them and say, here's your team. You can go create channels. You can go create lines of communication. Here's the basics you need to know. Everybody in the team has access to everything in the team. So just don't share PII or be careful what you do in there. But other than that, for now, this is your space. And maybe you can come back a day later. Here's some guidance we have for you. Follow these guidelines as best you can, because in 6 months, 12 months, we're going to come down and we're going to clean up your environment for you. Things like that. Do what you can. I did provide my first link here. It's a little hard to read, but it is Microsoft Teams Turn 3. It's a great article by, I'm pretty sure it's Jared Spataro. He's head of marketing for Microsoft 365 at Microsoft. He's been involved in the digital workspace of Microsoft for quite a few years as well. Really good article about what Teams has been doing if you want to learn more where it's happening. If you try to read some of the tea leaves about what's happening as well, I see a very, very bright future for what Teams has to offer.
Hey, Eric, a question came up.
Yeah.
Let me jump in with that real quick. How realistic will it be for a company with thousands of staff to switch from an on-premise AD-based authentication Office 365 to start using Teams as soon as possible?
If you're starting today, it's going to take you a little while to do that. So on-prem AD authentication is going to have to sync into Azure Active Directory. If you have not started that process, that's going to be a challenge, and that's where you're going to need to work with Microsoft to get that roadblock handled quickly, as quick as you can. Teams is a cloud-only experience, and I don't see it ever coming to on-prem, especially in the next week where you need this. So you're going to need some way to get the AAD sync happening so that you can do this. And that's not my area of expertise to tell you how long that's going to take. I can only tell you it's not going to happen in a day, but work with IT and say, what is it going to take to get this moving forward? This is where I'd be going to executive sponsor and say, look, we need this to happen today. Now, here's going to be a side argument you're going to hear, though. Okay, well, let's just go use a third party, another tool to provide what Office 365 can offer. We'll go to one of the competing products, and we'll just do that. Okay, so what are you going to do in 6 months? You're going to lose all of that? I think this is a terrible idea to say, well, let's just spin up a shadow IT environment of a third party something in a temporary for a temporary fix here. But if I was then told, look, we're not going to have an AD sync for 6 months, okay, just be aware that if you go to a competing product out there, you're not going to want to support it after 12 months. So it's difficult. But anyhow, the answer I can give you is you're going to need that AA day sync. If you haven't started, you need to start today, and then work with IT and Microsoft to determine the timeline of that, and then work with them to push it down to as quick as time as possible, and try to get IT on board to accept the potential hiccups that may occur.
Awesome. Thank you, Eric.
Cool. So what I want to then do for the next 10, 15 minutes here is talk about specific scenarios that we're looking to fix, we're looking to address, because our offices are all now closed. So to me, one of the first big things that we were able to do before that we're not able to do now is have a quick chat with someone at the cubicle. We can't go to a conference room to meet. We're not able to see people at the coffee machine to have that serendipitous moment of hey, wouldn't it be cool if we tried this in our organization? The answer to that, the way that we get around that is with, again, Microsoft Teams. You're going to see Microsoft Teams on most of my slides moving forward, because that's what it is. But what I'm trying to do here, again, is give you the tools that you need, the content you need to go back to your organization and say, we have these 5 things we need, and guess what? All of them are solved by this platform that we already have, or we were supposed to be rolling out. Let's stay within this cohesive strategy. So with Teams, we get meetings and chat. We can have text chat, we can have video chat, we can have voice chat, we can pull together meetings, we can have ad hoc meetings of 2, 3, 5 people, we can have a structured meeting within a channel. We're able to have the virtual conference room using webcams. We can then be able to share video feeds or whiteboards. It goes way beyond that, but like today, what you could quickly and easily do is you can spin up the meetings and chats. It's very easy to set up a chat with external people as well. Now, there are security concerns and thoughts around this, but it's pretty simple as a platform. If you're working with external partners or external users, you can basically send them a Teams meeting invite, and they can join in via the web, via a browser. They don't even need the Teams client to be able to join in and have the audio, video, text-based experience. So this to me is going to be the bread and butter of a digital workspace, at least for the immediate future, because this is what was one of the big problems we had in no longer having an office, is how do we communicate with people, because we don't want to do it in email all the time, because we now have 5,000 emails instead of 500 a day. We need to cut that down to 50 a day, because what we're trying to do is have a 3-person chat. We're trying to have a team be able to get together and discuss Project X so that we can continue to move it forward, et cetera. We don't have a conference room anymore. Teams is going to solve that for you. Very reliable and super easy. Now, two quick tips I wanted to provide to you on Teams, specifically related to meetings. I believe it's really important in general to have your camera on as much as possible. I could be in a soapbox here for a while, but I'm going to try to keep this kind of quick. A lot of us are not used to working from home, and there's a lot of benefits and there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of issues with it. A lot of us have kids that are home from school now for a very long time, and they're running around. And at the same time, we're also maybe just like, we're still in our pajamas all day because no one cares. I don't think that's a good idea. And the other thing is we're social creatures. One of the important things we have is to be able to see what people are saying and be able to understand who wants to talk and to be able to read facial expressions. I read a great article, I thought it was a really cool article a week or so ago, talking about the U.S. Supreme Court, and they're still going to deliberate, but they're not going to be having hearings at all, and oral arguments. And what they're looking to do, though, is set up video chat, because one of the things they miss when you've got 9 very intelligent people in a room is they can see each other, and they're all attorneys, right? So they all want to talk, but they need to be able to see each other to understand who was talking and who wanted to talk, and also read the facial expressions. And when you're all remote and all you're doing is listening to someone, you can really miss that. And especially when you have a meeting of 10, 15, 20 people, you're going to find that maybe only 3 or 4 are talking and everyone else is listening. And these are sort of distractions and stuff. And my opinion is that it's really important to be able to see what people are doing. And we're in a workplace still. Now, a lot of us are going to say, I don't want to. I've got kids in the background. We have blurred background. You've got ways within Teams to help you create a professional environment, but it also helps you as the end user think through, how am I going to create a professional work environment in my home? Because I still have a job to do. I mean, this is not vacation for us. We still have to work. And to me, that really helps. The second thing is that I really would like you to think about in Teams is recording as many meetings as possible. I think this is a general great tip within Teams, and we do this extensively within PIXELMILL. Whenever we have a Teams meeting, we go ahead and record it. And now we make sure people know it's recorded, there's a big banner, etc. And if people say no, we don't. But the value of that recording is people can then go back to it easily, because Teams is integrated heavily with Stream. It does require Stream, but you can all your recordings can be stored into Stream. There's going to be auto captioning automatically enables. You can go search these conversations. A lot of people won't be able to make meetings potentially, and I think that we should provide tools within our organization to really help people through these troubled times, such as my kid needs something, or there's something happening in my house right now, or my bandwidth went down, and I would like to still be able to participate in the meeting. Well, recordings can give people the ability to go back, to be able to listen to what happened. And then what's really cool about Teams as well is if you have a structured meeting, you can then have that chat related to it. And so people can, even after the meeting's happened, you can still go back and you can communicate and collaborate on that with the meeting recording as a backstop to be able to go back and say, well, okay, well, here's what was said, here's what we decided, etc. So 2 quick tips I really want you to think about. I do have a bigger Teams etiquette I do hope to get to here shortly, but I wanted to start with some of those 2 quick tips that are not necessarily, well, the first one is controversial, I found, in the sense that a lot of us just don't like to be on camera, yet we're okay being in the office together. I think that's just because some of us are lazy, and I'm just as guilty sometimes. I roll out of bed at 6 in the morning to get onto a 6 a.m. call. Yeah, it's happened before. I might not be totally ready to go, but I'm able to participate in the conversation. So I understand why a lot of us might be hesitant, but if you can get the proper buy-in and you accept it as a cultural element of your organization, it does work. And we did that at PIXELMILL, and the general consensus is we're all happy with it. Of course, there's some people who are like, I don't really want to. No, it's the policy now, and we're moving forward with that. Okay, so another big thing that, of course, we're doing is...
Question, Nick.
Yeah.
Hey, Eric, a quick try to sneak this one in. Can we assume that bandwidth in Office 365/Teams is not a limiting factor, especially when you use video?
Can you assume it's not a limiting factor? No, it is a limiting factor, in my opinion. Now, let me rephrase this and kind of think about this. What I'm hearing is bandwidth not a limiting factor for Teams conversations or chats, videos, etc. Is that right, Michael? That's kind of how you think of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
It is, but and that made me think about one thing I didn't say, which is one of the things you might end up doing if you're in a low bandwidth environment, and I've been there as well. I wanted to listen in on a call where I was a passenger in a car, and I didn't really want to look at the video, but I wanted to hear what was happening. In Teams, in the desktop, mobile clients, etc., browser clients, you can turn off incoming video. So you may turn off not only your video, but incoming as well. It's not so much that I found that Teams bandwidth requirements are pretty minimal, actually. I found some pretty low bandwidth environments where Teams does work pretty well. But if someone is on a slow or inconsistent connection, then Teams can falter some. I have found that cell connections actually do work pretty well. Now, of course, you need to work with your data provider to know bandwidth, etc. All my legalese stuff, I'm not responsible for you having a high cell phone bill. But if you have a couple I have found, if I'm on my phone and I have a couple of bars of connectivity, I can have a full video Teams chat, Teams video call without really any hesitation, without any problems. I am nearish a big city. I'm not out in the countryside by all means, but I'm not in a very large city, but I'm close to Sacramento, which is pretty large. So if you are out in the countryside, that might be a little more challenging with bandwidth. But I found audio calls if you just stick with just strict audio calls, your bandwidth concerns should be pretty minimal as well. If you have 100 people on your call, I have found that your bandwidth does not cause a problem with all of the other people's calls, and I have found that even with a very large meeting, that your experience will not be diminished by a low bandwidth because there's a lot of people. If you have one person on the call or 1,000 people on the call, I found that the bandwidth requirements are not overly different. Now, I could see that if you had 100 incoming video feeds, that could be just a little more challenging because think about all those extra bits that need to come in. But that's when I probably personally would be turning off incoming video. So as much as I turn video on, yes, but if you're limited bandwidth, what do you want to prioritize? Probably you want to prioritize the voice and then followed by the screen if there's any screen sharing happening. Okay. I wish I had probably another 3 hours. So we've got a few more minutes here, about I think 20 is what we said. We typically go 15 after. So let's keep moving forward. Something else that we do within typically Exchange is scheduling and calendars. But what I love about Teams is that it's directly within the Teams environment, so that your calendar, you don't have to switch over to Outlook. You don't have to switch over to Exchange to see your calendar, and then you can schedule all your meetings there, as well as get your status updates as well, which is just, I think, really super powerful. And then if you're in a team, if you're in a conversation with somebody, you can also schedule additional calls, meetings, etc., with that channel, with that team, with the people directly in the channels. Just super powerful. So not only do you get Outlook, but you can then move that directly into Teams, and that's out of the box. That's basically how Teams works. Now, your document collaboration, if you're not already doing this within Teams, like you're trying to roll this stuff out, Teams and SharePoint work really, really well together, and they're designed to, obviously. And I do see them working even better together. I see them only getting stronger ties because, as I said, they're owned basically by the same person within Microsoft. One thing, if people might say that, oh, well, SharePoint, Teams is built on SharePoint. No, that's not true. I mean, Teams is Teams and SharePoint's SharePoint. They each have their thing that they're good at, and they support each other. SharePoint is really good at storing documents, and is really good at creating web pages and portals. And there's value to this, like a news article, to be able to have a whole intranet portal where you put all of your content together. That's not as conversational based. That's SharePoint, and that's going to be on SharePoint, and that's awesome. That's a good thing. But for document storage, you would store that in SharePoint. That's the spot for it. And Teams links directly to that. When you set up a team within Microsoft Teams, it automatically creates a SharePoint site collection for you in the back end, automatically tied to the group of people that you've provided access to that team in Microsoft Teams, and you have access to all that stuff. And super cool. As soon as you do this, you now get the power of SharePoint. I love it. So one of the big things that we use all the time is the co-authoring. As two examples I can think of, one is this direct presentation that you're seeing. We put this together as a team exercise in the last 5 days. We need to put this together. We had a team for this. We had a channel for this within Teams. We pulled people into it. We then had this PowerPoint presentation stored within SharePoint, and we could then co-author it. I used the desktop client. The rest of my team, or some of them, used the browser client, and we're all able to see as we're working on this document together. And we can then have chats within Teams to be able to talk about this document. Super cool, super powerful, and it's going to work. When you start to mention people in this, you can then start to highlight and notify people, hey, this is something you need to go look at. And it works so well and beautiful together. So between SharePoint, Teams, Exchange, you've got so much of what you need to be able to work on documents, work on digital assets. If you have things that used to print out, you can keep them in digital form, and so you can still work on them, etc. You can then have those conversations, the in-person conversations you used to have. It's like, what is the big thing that you're missing here is you're not able to have lunch with your friend in the cafeteria, but then I'd say spin up a little meeting with them and turn the camera on. You can have lunch with them and you can talk to them and say, hey, how was your day today? How are the kids doing, etc. So through these two tools alone, you're getting so much more, but I hate to use it, but wait, there's so much more. We've already talked about this. I'm going to keep moving forward. When we're having those to kind of go back to the meetings and chats we have, when we need to have a conference room, we've got that through Teams, through the group communication collaboration. We have those conversations in cubicles that you used to have. We've got those. Now, you may not be able to just run into somebody on your way to the coffee, which I get it. I mean, that's super important for a lot of us. But as you're walking by someone's office, you see their door open. Use your notifications or your status presence of people. So if you know if they're in the office, you could use the co-calendars to be able to share calendars to be able to see if people have free times and hit them up and just say, hey, you have a moment. And so you can still, I'm going to have lunch. Do you take your lunch break now? And these can help break down some of those other barriers that you may have, which then gets me to the team notification aspect of it. Like, how do you know that someone's trying to get a hold of you when they can't just tap you on the shoulder or knock on your door? And that's going to happen through team notifications. So how this happens within Teams is you can @mention somebody, which is effectively, you should know what this is by now through Twitter and Instagram and the rest, but you just @ that person's name. So you can @Eric Overfield, and that's gonna ping me through Teams to say I've been notified that something's happening. Now, what I mean by all of this is, if I'm in a channel with you, I'm in a spot where I can be talking to you, and if you put a chat out there, I might be notified in this presence that I have something unread here, but I'm not going to see a big obvious notification that I've been notified, and I have a big, like a number that says, hey, you've got 5 notifications you haven't dealt with yet. And so @mentioning somebody is really important if you want to get their attention. And this is going to be super important to get really like managers on up attention for sure. And again, at PIXELMILL, small organization, and my team knows this, if you want me to read something, you're going to have to @mention me, because I get so many notifications. There's so many channels and teams and groups that I'm in, I can't follow them all. So if I need to be in on a conversation directly, just @mention me, get me involved, and then I'll be notified so that I know that this is something I need to follow up on. You can @mention people, channels, and groups, so and teams. So if I'm in a specific channel and you @mention the channel, everybody who's a member of that channel, member of that team, will effectively get a notification, some sort of ping that says, hey, you need to go deal with this over here. So be careful when you @mention a channel or a team, because you're telling everybody, hey, go look at this. It definitely has its place. If you've got something that you want everyone to see, then by all means do it. But if it's just a few people that you really want to see this one message, you just @mention them. Now flip that around on the other side. I get too many notifications. I'm in teams or channels where I really don't care. I don't need to be notified that there's something there. I just need to be highlighted when I look, because I know once a day to go over to that team to go see if there's anything of chatter that I care about. The cute cat pictures channel. I don't need a notification of it, but I'll go look to see if there's any cute pictures of cats or dogs or something. I can turn off notifications of that channel. So basically it's quieting the channels. I don't want to be told anymore if there's notifications. If I got mentioned personally, I'd still be notified, but I don't need the channel notifications. So you, the user, can take back some control of Teams and notifications. So before we end Teams and we start looking at other things, planning for long-term success, as well as other platforms that we've got within Office 365, I want to end with some Teams etiquette aspect of it. And I think this will help. Hopefully you'll just copy and paste some of these components and then just put them as part of our little quick governance policy that you need to send out to your organization. The first one is minding the thread. And what I mean by this is in Teams, it's a threaded conversations that you can have. And if you're replying to the thread, to a specific topic that's being discussed, you want to comment in that thread. You don't want to start a new thread. And this can get kind of challenging because sometimes people may not notice and they accidentally start a new thread. Help remind people to push that back or to delete their message or to say, oh, no, sorry, that's supposed to go back up over there. But keep your threaded discussions within a given thread. Tag people that really need to see something right away. All of us are busy. We don't live in Teams in that way. We don't have time to look at everything that's happening. So if you need someone's attention and you need to ensure they've seen it, mention them. On the flip side of that, just realized I had a misspelling on the third line. I was going to say on tagging people is if you want to ensure that people have read something, it's worth having a quick governance policy of if you've read something that you've been mentioned on as a policy, you need to respond to that message in some way. The best way is through the emoticons. Basically, you can give like a thumbs up or a happy face or agree or whatever. The idea being here, and think of that from the other side, is if someone's made a comment or whatnot, let them know you read it, not necessarily by saying I agree or yes, but you can use notifications to, you can use the thumbs up, etc., to be able to tell people I've read it. And that's really important to know that this message hasn't just been lost. Think of this in email as a flip side. If someone sent you an email and you wanted to ensure that you've told someone, yeah, I read your email, you'd have to physically send them back a message and say, yes, I agree, I've read it, etc. That's really painful. It fills up inboxes. By just having just a thumbs up within a Teams chat, really goes a long way to say, I have seen what you have said, and we can move forward with that conversation. The third one is supposed to say, i.e. blur. The idea is consider your environment with video. You can blur your background within video, which is really important. So a lot of people are working from their kitchen table right now, and I understand that. And if you blur the background, it helps alleviate from distractions in the background. Maintaining your presence and your status in the teams, I think, is pretty important. If you're out of office, let people know. If you're away from your desk, you can set your presence to be able to say that you're not around, and that's pretty important so that people can know if they should be bugging you or not. Now, along that lines, though, I personally, and this is a governance thing, I personally look at teams as saying, look, I know that you're not available, and I'm okay with that, but I wanted this said, and I push that out, but if that person had set their status that they're available and they don't reply to me for 10 minutes, and I purposely specifically had a chat, it could be kind of weird because, well, I just needed a quick notification, and our policy is if you're chatted with and you're available, could you at least give a thumbs up or a response within X number of business minutes, shall we say. So by you providing what your presence is, it helps people who might be trying to chat with you understand what the a reasonable response should look like. Now, we did write a blog post a little while back. It was in December we wrote it, and it's still very valid. If you want more kind of rules around Teams etiquette, by all means, please check out our blog. You'll find some really fun stuff. Some things I really want you to think about: long-term success. This one's going to be really tough. And the reason why I'm saying this is tough is because this is long-term success, and you may not be able to get to any of this or all of this right now because you need to get a solution in place for your digital workspace and Office 365 now. Things that you would want to think about for sure and think long-term what you might be able to do about this is like, who is it that's going to be able to create a team? And right now, you may need to extend those possibilities. You may need to extend what is available and allow more people to create teams than you might otherwise would, or you might need to provide an easier path to getting teams created. We are working with a client who basically no one's allowed to create teams except a few managers, and this is a national organization with lots and lots of locations, and that's just like a no starter. If you have to go to IT every time you need a new team, it's just not going to work. So can you create it's called a group policy? Can you add more people to the list of who can create teams? Can you just send a mass message out to them to say, hey, look, you've been granted access to this. Before you create teams, we need you to follow this policy. In this time, we need you to take responsibility and educate yourself. Read this 3-minute document on what you should or shouldn't do, and there you go. And trust your fellow workers right now. I mean, we all need to pull together here, but at the same time, then have a plan in place on what we're going to do when we have to clean this mess up, because a mess will get created. I do understand that. Think through what kind of channels you might need within given teams. If you can plan on what your team structure is going to look like, so what kind of teams are you going to be creating within Microsoft Teams? And right now, as I talked earlier, you may end up having teams that are not ideal. You may just go ahead and create a hierarchical-based structure, and every group, every department within your org is going to get a team. And there you go. You can go ahead and create a team for them. Now, there is a limitation to how many people can be in a team. It's last I knew it was 5,000, isn't it? I keep forgetting this. It's 2,500. I think it's 5,000. Someone's going to chat. Oh yeah, it's a common number we all know, and I just blanked on it. So if you've got an organization that has 10,000 people, I know that that's too many. You can't create a team for 10,000 people right now. It's not going to work. Now there's all these other counter arguments. Do you really want a team with 10,000 people in it? or 5,000, excuse me. That's a pretty big team. There'd be a lot of weird conversations going on, but it at least creates spaces for people to have conversations now, and that's pretty important. You may already have Office 365 groups. You can create teams on top of that. So you already had Office 365 and you added on Teams in your environment, Microsoft Teams in your environment. You may not go create new teams with new groups. You may have existing groups of people. You can create teams on top of that. And is that what you want to do? And can you make quick decisions now? And you'll know your org better than I will for sure. Does that make sense for you to go add a team on top of it? The catch is that once you create that team on top of that group, that's your team for the group. And that's where it can get tricky, because if you think you need to rebuild it in 6 months, that's going to be a real challenge. And I don't have a quick answer for you. That one's going to take me a while, and I'm going to have to punt on it for now because it's a challenge, and I get it. And you need to find the trade-off. If it's going to take you 3 weeks to decide how you're going to create teams, you've already gone past the problem, because your org needs a solution now, as we keep talking about.
Hey, Eric, this is your 5-minute warning.
Yeah, I know. We're only halfway through. So what I'm going to do here is kind of I'm going to look at extending the digital workspace beyond Teams, and I'm going to do this now via some demos. So I've got 5 minutes to do demos, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions. If there's not, okay. If there are, we're going to go ahead and answer those via email. Via our blog, through our show notes. I wanted to show you some of the quick articles that I talked about, and we'll get you the slide deck so you can have them. Microsoft turned 3, so I think this is a really good article to read. It was just published yesterday. It talks all about what's happening within Teams. If you go to docs.microsoft.com/Microsoft Teams, you can get all this cool documentation on Teams. So things like, rolling out Teams, and then that wasn't the one I wanted to go to. This is a great article, but it was the, I think there was a training one that I thought was really cool. There it is. So there's, under training, there's these instructor-led training. There are all of these videos. These are basically video recordings of Teams. If you need training material, it is out there. There's another article that's just written recently as well, which is working remotely with Office 365. This is kind of the start of some of the material I've gone over as well. Already provided this link for you. Another great article. Supporting remote workers using Teams. Again, the documentation exists for you. And there's something else I wanted to talk about that I would have, if I had more time. Microsoft recently created this building a crisis management site to help connect your organization together. This would be on top of SharePoint. They go through basically how to set this up. And so we did that in our POC, and it's pretty easy to do. But we created a crisis management SharePoint portal that we could then link to from Teams. We can create a Teams tab that links to this SharePoint page, so it's easy for people to work with and get the material they may need to help understand what's happening. If your organization with 50 offices around the world, 100, 1,000, doesn't matter, each office may end up having their own crisis management page, and that can get a little overwhelming. If you had a central spot where you can help spread the message that your organization needs in a time of crisis, creating a portal might help, and Microsoft already gave you the blueprint of how to put something like that together.
Hey, Eric, if you're sharing your screen for something that isn't the presentation, we can't see it. There we go.
That is a real shame. Here's the links again. Thank you. Sorry about that. So Microsoft Teams Training 33. I had this instructor-led videos. This found all under docs.microsoft.com. Working remotely with Office 365. Supporting remote workers, super cool. There's this whole site on building a crisis management site, which was just written and walks through how to build a SharePoint site. We spun this up in less than an hour on a POC that we build and maintain, pulling together information. Great spot for pulling things together. And yeah, in 2 minutes here, I wish I could go through so much more. The slide deck we're going to give you is going to give you about another 20 slides of information with links, etc., that you can use to help your organization out. I think I'm going to basically end it here because you've stayed with me for a long time, and I really appreciate it. I will get to all of your questions eventually very soon, so I can try to help you move your organization forward. I greatly appreciate your time, and yeah, Michael, I say I know we've got a webinar coming up next week. Tell us about it, and let's wrap this up. But again, thank you everybody for bearing with me on this one. Let's all stick together here. Let's all beat this whole crisis that we have in front of us together. And please, please, please stay safe for you and your family and your communities.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I brought on my executive assistant. He wanted to say hello and say thank you, everyone, for your patience today and for hanging out with us. This, like I said, this is a special edition of our webinar series. Our regularly scheduled program is back next Thursday with a session on combining Power Apps and Teams with Microsoft MVP April Dunham. It's going to be a really great session.
We are so lucky.
Yeah, it's going to be a really great session. If you want more information about it, if you go to our blog on pixelmill.com, there's a whole blog about it. Gives you a little rundown about it. Definitely check it out if you can. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today on this crazy Friday. We really appreciate your guys' time. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to PIXELMILL, to Eric, and myself. We'd be more than happy to help get you guys set up. With that, I'll stop taking up your time. Thank you so much again. Have a great rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you all down the road.
Bye all. Be safe.